What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we are looking at the best FPL fixtures to come from game week 30 to 33. So 4 game weeks in total. Teams we should be targeting, whether you're on wildcard, whether you're not on wildcard. We talked a lot about fixture swings, but let's have a look at it from game week 30. People have got transfers to spend. There's teams we should be looking at. Maybe some teams that people have gone off, actually we should be concentrating on. So thought we'd do a fixtures video as we're in the international break. Normal content to come next week. Still got a few more things planned for this week. If you do enjoy this video, please do give it a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here, and let's jump into it. So we're going to talk about the first of 4 teams, which is Wolves. And on my other screen, which you can't see, but it's going to help me talk through this, we've got league positions in the Premier League table, because we'll start to hear the phrase on the beach soon, where we think that teams have basically given up because they're not going to get relegated, they're not going to get into Europe, and therefore league position does matter a little bit because there is more money the higher up you finish, but it probably isn't as important. Although we are going into a Euros, an international tournament year, so perhaps players will be trying to get into their squads for that. But I think all these things, there's no point in completely overblowing it, to be honest, because I don't know how much of an impact it really has, but we'll think about it anyway, right? And I've also got stats, so non-penalty expected goals conceded, and also for, so looking at best attacks, best defences, and also the long-term fixtures as well, because sometimes the next 4 fixtures could be good, but the rest are awful, and if you don't need a player, it's probably worth ignoring. So, after all that, a minute's worth of chat, we're going to talk about Wolves. Now, the word irrelevant gets used on the internet quite a lot, especially on YouTube, and I think Wolves have been irrelevant for a lot of the season, but perhaps they're about to come back to some relevance going into game week 30 and beyond. So West Ham at home, Fulham away, Sheffield United at home, Burnley at home. Now, those fixtures in particular screen to me good defensive returns potentially, but also attacking as well. Burnley and Sheffield United are both teams with poor defences, right? So Sheffield United, non-penalty expected goals conceded, the worst in the league on average so far, and Burnley make up the top 4 as well. So both good fixtures for that. The problem mainly comes to which attacker do you go for. I really do think right now, in terms of who's getting minutes and how good they are at potentially returning FPL points, either assists or goals, it has to be Neto. I would say right now there are no other options you should even consider. Willian Jose up front just hasn't looked good enough. Like, he's just not a replacement for Raul Jimenez at all. Perhaps it's going to take a bit of time to gel in the side, but he's been there quite a while now, and it just hasn't really happened. Traore, I think, looks good. End product, is it there? I think he definitely has improved over the last few seasons. I definitely got it wrong with him last year. But again, I don't really know how much goal threat he really has. Neither the assist threat either. And Podence obviously hasn't really been someone that we've been looking at. So I do think it's Neto or no one. For that price, I don't think you're going to get too many better options. Like, if you wanted to go up to Jota, you'd have to pay a lot more money. If you wanted to go to Gundogan, for example, it's not too much more. But if you were worried about rotation, you don't really get those worries with Neto. So I actually like him. I think for 5.7 million, not going to do too much better. So depending on how you're building your squads, depending on where you've got spaces in your midfield, he is someone that I would look at. Looking at the longer term fixtures after Burnley, it's West Brom away, another good attacking fixture. Then it's Brighton, Spurs, Everton and Man United. So I would say from now until game week 34, Wolves are pretty good. After that, it gets a bit trickier. So I'm not sure I would completely go all in, like 3 Wolves players. If you want an attacker, Neto. And if you wanted a defender, you could look at someone like Semedo, but he's 5.2 million. Personally, I'd rather go a little bit cheaper, because after, like I said, after 34, you may be looking at shipping them on or putting them on your bench. Now, originally, when I came into thinking about this, I was looking at Saiss as the option to go for because of his goal threat. Now, bearing in mind, when we first used to buy Saiss at the start of the season, I think probably last year as well, Cody was basically never allowed up for corners for whatever reason. Then he scored for England, and now it looks like he's going up a bit more. And I looked at the amount of shots in the box between him, Saiss, and Bolly as well. And Bolly actually came out on top in the last 6 matches, but he's 5.4 million. Which isn't great, right? You probably don't want to spend that much on a Wolves defender, especially a centre-back. So although he does have more goal threat, It's not like Cody is not getting shots off in the box as well. So in this case, I would just buy the cheapest one. And for me, that's Cody. He's absolutely nailed on. And I do think the defence is a good option. So looking at the league table, they're on 35 points. So you've got the obviously magic 40 that everyone tries to get to. You're probably not going to need that many points given how kind of Sheffield United and West Brom are doing at the moment. But Wolves, I should say, still need a few more points to get there. And I do think they're going to get them over these few fixtures. So West Ham might not be the greatest team to bring in a Wolves player for. But the other three are pretty good, and then West Brom is decent too. So I'm all for going for Wolves at the moment, especially if you're on a wild card. I would definitely look at it. Cody would be my defender of choice, I think. Let me know if you disagree. I know a lot of people are liking Semedo, quite attacking on that right-hand side. And Neto, I don't think he's probably as good as an FPL option as people think he is, but I'd rather have him than like a Lingard or something like that, and as a bit of a cheaper option to Jota or Gundogan, you could think about him too. So I think we have to start looking at getting Chelsea players in if you haven't already. The defence just looks so good. So again, looking at the numbers, they are second only to Man City in terms of best defence. So Man City 0.61 expected goals conceded on average, non-penalty, and Chelsea is 0.79. That is so good. That's an elite defence. And you've got Rudiger at 4.6 million, who's a great buy. Now, as an owner of Rudiger, I know that even he has a chance of rotation, right? He did get rested for a game recently in the league, but I do think the fact he was straight back in, he's played a couple of games since, I still see him as probably first choice, but I think Tuchel is not a manager that is afraid to rotate. But at 4.6 million, if you've got a bench, I wouldn't be too worried about it because the fixtures are so good. West Brom, Palace, Brighton, West Ham as well, all really good. Then after that is Fulham, which is pretty decent. It does get a bit trickier after that. So Man City, Arsenal, Leicester, Villa. So potentially you don't want to triple up on the defence. That might be a step too far. But I don't think a double up from kind of now until Game Week 34 is a bad option either, right? And I've only got space for 3 players on screen, but Mendy in goal at 5.1 million, he has to be worth a look in as well, I would say. Now, I've got Brighton at home in Game Week 32 written down. They've just announced the FA Cup fixtures, so that has now come off as a fixture in Game Week 32 in the FPL app. So for anyone that's panicking, that will disappear. But I'm pretty sure, based on what Ben Crennan has said, that fixture will get put back into Game Week 32. They'll just play it in midweek instead. So hopefully that's correct. If it isn't, then obviously we'll talk about that later on. But that should be what happens. If you want a defender that's absolutely nailed on, it looks like Azpilicueta is the one. Now, I'm not sitting here saying or guaranteeing you 100% he will never be rotated, because he could be, right? They've got quite a few games coming up. They're still in the Champions League. But right now, he hasn't been rested at all. He's played every single minute. And therefore, for 5.8 million, he buys you a surety. You could go for Alonso. He's 5.7 million, I think. I'll just have a look on the other screen. Yeah, he's 5.7. Much more attacking than any of these defenders. Like if Alonso was nailed on, he would be in every single person's team, I think, because he's just that good. But you have to worry a bit more about the rotation. And while attacking threat is good, clean sheets are the bread and butter, and they've got so many good fixtures coming up. I would probably want more of a nailed-on defender myself. If it was just for Game Week 30 before your wild card, a lot of people are going to go for that Alonso punt, and I like that. But for a long-term move, I'd probably rather have Azpilicueta instead. With attackers, the fixtures are really good again, especially West Brom and Palace. The problem is right now is trying to find one that's absolutely nailed on. And so far, for Chelsea, that hasn't really been the case. Werner's played quite a few games, Mount's played quite a few games, and Havertz has just started playing more as a number 9. We saw Tuchel talk about him, how he wasn't a false 9, he's more like a proper 9. And he did get into some good positions in the game he's played. I think his stats, 0.23 expected goals, 0.1 expected assists per 90. It's nothing special. Someone like Neto, for example, is probably a little bit higher than that for a lot less money. But we're talking about a player who's just come into a team where they've got a new manager and maybe hasn't had proper time to adjust, and so it's not fair to compare him just on stats to other players. I think with the fixtures they got coming up, you could do for way worse punts than Havertz. The only thing is, will he continue to start every single game? I'm not sure any player in attack is someone you could definitely bet on in that. So again, you'd need a bit of a bench if you're going to bring him in. But as a punt, for those fixtures, especially West Brom and Crystal Palace, it doesn't get much better than that. I think Mount is another option that people look at, 7 million. Again, stats-wise, for me, just doesn't have enough goal threat and doesn't create enough assists, I think his chances created are quite high because he's on set pieces, but in terms of quality balls from open play, it's not quite there yet. And that's not me putting him down as a player, because I think the role that he plays for Chelsea is great, but we're talking about from an FPL point of view. And for me, I just think for 7 million, again, Jota, Neto, even Gundogan, probably better options even with these fixtures. I think if I was going to go for someone right now, it'd be the guy that's basically playing up front for Chelsea. And I probably, with Werner, I think I've just given up with him on this season. I want to see how it plays out for the rest of this year. I'm not saying I would never take a punt on him, but there's so many good strikers, including Kane, Vardy, Iheanacho, have all got good fixtures coming up, Antonio, Bamford, etc. There's just no space, but with Havertz there might be. But if you're going to ignore the attack, which I think is fair enough, defence is where it's at, and at least one defender, if not a double up, looks pretty good right now. I don't know how much more I can really talk about Liverpool, because I've spoken about them a lot, and at this point we just need to see them play a couple of these easier fixtures and then see how they get on. I think the fixtures are way too good to ignore. There aren't many teams in the league that I would ignore with fixtures like Liverpool have coming up, maybe West Brom or Crystal Palace, etc. But any of the kind of more, dare I say it, decent teams, then I would definitely be looking at it. So Arsenal and Villa, I do think Villa can be gotten at. That's why I captain Kane against them. I'd happily captain a Liverpool player against Villa, but then it gets really good, right? Leeds, then Newcastle, Man United away is tricky. Southampton, West Brom, Burnley, Palace. You heard me talk about this on the wildcard video yesterday. If you watched that, the fixtures are just too good, and I do think there's some captainable fixtures in there, and therefore I would want at least one attacker. Now, I will say straight away, there's some players on here that I've not put, which you could definitely consider. Jota being one. Now, he is going to be somewhat of a bandwagon starting in Game Week 31, perhaps in Game Week 32. I think everyone's going to jump on him. People are already talking about him. After just what? I think he's got 1 goal since he's returned, potentially. He got the one against Wolves for sure. But people are eyeing up these fixtures, right? They know how good they are. So I don't think he's going to be a differential for long, but that shouldn't really put us off. For 6.6 million, that is a great price. I think you'd have to have quite a budget to go for Mane and Salah. I think for most people that would involve dropping Bruno Fernandes, which I don't think people would be comfortable doing. So having one of those two, and for the sake of 0.6 million, I would definitely go for the penalty taker in Salah, and having Jota next to him, I think that's fine. I don't really want to get into a conversation about covering Salah or Mane. Can you cover them with Jota? I think in their own right, they're good for different reasons. As much as I think Jota's going to get good minutes, I would still put Mane and Salah as more nailed. Salah has penalties as well. And therefore, if I was going to captain a Liverpool player, I would always side with Salah. But Jota in his own right for his price is a bargain, basically. And we probably shouldn't let the price put us off captaining him, because his stats are pretty good this season in comparison to Salah. Like, if you look at the per 90-minute stats, they're actually not too dissimilar. So you could make a case for captaining Jota, but in his own right, I think for 6.6 million is a great buy, and I'm definitely looking to bring him in Game Week 31, not instead of Salah. It will be as well as Salah, but that might be different for you. In defence, there's, again, I've only got space for 3 players on this graphic, but there's other players you could choose from. So Nat Phillips at 4 million, potentially now going to strike a partnership up with Kabak. Fabinho seems to have gone back into midfield. Maybe we'll see more of that over the next couple of games. Like if Phillips plays against Arsenal as well, then you could look at to bring him back in. Interestingly, though, I was looking at the stats. So non-penalty expected goals conceded. Liverpool are the 6th best team. Now, I haven't got the numbers here, but I'm pretty sure for last year they weren't like in top 2. I think it was Chelsea and City again. So that's about right. 1.02 non-penalty expected goals conceded per 90. Interestingly, when you put in penalties, it's 1.23, and that actually puts them way further down the table. So obviously you don't discount penalties, but it's also not something that you can necessarily rely on. So throughout this, I'm using non-penalty data. So they're the 6th best team. They're not far behind Wolves or Spurs, and then Brighton, Chelsea and City are just that little bit of a step ahead. So Liverpool defence, bearing in mind they lost Van Dijk quite early. They also lost Gomez quite early. The numbers are pretty good because the way they play, they have so much of the ball. Fabinho, etc., win it back in midfield. It doesn't matter that they've got Kabak and Phillips there because they've got players in front of them kind of protecting that. And obviously they still have Trent and Robertson who are mainstays, and Alisson is a great keeper as well. So I'm not too put off the defence, and I think the fixtures are kind of there. The only thing is, Arsenal, Villa and Leeds are all teams that you can see scoring goals, especially if Jack Grealish is back for Villa. So potentially you want to wait a little bit longer for the defender. But if you're on like a wild card or something, Nat Phillips for 4 million could be a potential bargain. You are taking some risk that he doesn't keep his place, and obviously it would block a Liverpool spot. So if you wanted to triple up down the line, you'd have to take him out. Otherwise, you pay the premium, you get someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson. Right now on the R, I think Trent's looking really good. He's getting forward, balls into the box improving, on set pieces as well. If I had to choose between the two, I think I would go for him now, albeit earlier on in the season it was Robertson. I wouldn't really begrudge having Robertson. I just think right now Trent's looking like the better pick. So don't write Liverpool off just yet. The fixtures are good. They're more than good, to be honest. The amount of great fixtures they have left to play is crazy. Their defensive numbers are decent. When you look at attacking numbers, they're second. They are still a good team, but they are on a bit of a bad finishing streak right now. Conversion rates and stuff like that are down, but I would not back against them. I'm having at least 2, and I might try and fit in a defender at some point. So the last team on the list is Man United, who I don't think we've really talked that much about from an FPL perspective outside of Bruno Fernandes recently, for a few reasons. They blanked in Game Week 29, and also I think a lot of people already had their players, and if they didn't, they weren't really looking to bring them in. But the fixtures are kind of there to maybe allow you to still bring him in. So defensive-wise, I don't think Brighton, Spurs or Burnley are that bad. And Shaw at 5.2 million is looking so creative right now. He's brilliant, to be honest. Like, this is the Shaw we've always kind of expected. And he's putting so many balls into the box. We saw the goal against Man City as well. He's getting forward. But not only that, his delivery is brilliant. If we had a Shaw on the right-hand side, Man United overall would be a much, much better team. Like, I love Wan-Bissaka, but from an attacking point of view, he's just not quite there. And again, if you look at the numbers, Man United 5th for non-penalty expected goals, just behind Chelsea and a little bit further behind Leeds. So one of the more attacking teams, so we know get quite a few penalties as well. So I'm not going to really talk too much about Bruno Fernandes. I think most people have got him. If they haven't, they're looking to buy. They're not looking to sell. It's difficult to add a second attacker because Cavani, Martial, they're either not staying fit or they're not definitely going to play. And then Greenwood sometimes on the right, and he's been central recently. And he's not putting up fantastic numbers either. Like, his expected goals and stuff is kind of similar to last year. Only this year, he's not putting away every single chance he gets. So Rashford would probably be the one, because when he's fit, he always plays. And I think the fixtures, not that bad. Brighton and Spurs, perhaps from an attacking perspective, are not fantastic. But Burnley, decent. Leeds, decent. Then they play Liverpool, which is tough. Then it's Villa, Leicester, Fulham, Wolves. So I think you could make an argument to add a second attacker, but I do think the fixtures are not quite as good as they look. What I would say, though, from a defensive point of view, there are some tough teams in there. So Spurs in 31, Liverpool's in 34, Leicester in 36. And to be fair, Leicester just did one over on us in the FA Cup. They were really good, although it wasn't a full-strength Man United side. I don't want to make excuses, but it could be a different result in the league. I'm not saying that it's a guaranteed Man United win or clean sheet, but it would be a different game in the league than it was in the FA Cup. But also, you've seen now how Man United approach these bigger games. Not to the point where I would target them and say, right, Man United have got a tough game, got to get someone in. But it probably doesn't put you off as much having a player. So I think Luke Shaw for 5.2 million, like, if I look at the remaining fixtures, and bearing in mind, yes, okay, when you get to the end of the season, anything can happen once places are tied in. But you've got Wolves, Fulham, Liverpool and Spurs, if we're going to say that those two teams or the matches will be kind of cagey affairs. Burnley and Brighton, that's 6 of the last 9. Look, I'm not saying they'll get 6 clean sheets, but there is a chance of getting a clean sheet in most of those games, coupled with Shaw's attacking threat. I don't think it's the worst time to be buying a Man United defender. We are in a period where Wolves are looking pretty good, Chelsea are looking good, Liverpool are looking good, as I've just spoken about. People might still have Man City players. West Ham fixtures towards the end of the season are really good, so you might carry Cresswell or Dawson or Sofal through. So it's tricky to find a spot for Shaw, but I don't think it's the worst buy. And I think going forward now, he has to be kind of up there with the best of the best, almost, at least getting to that point. of attacking defenders. And for 5.2 million, he's quite cheap as well. So Bruno Fernandes and Shaw are probably the two that I would go for. If I had to pick another one, probably Rashford. But to be honest, I don't think it's worth tripling up on Man United for the rest of the season. There we go. That is it for this one. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a like and hit subscribe if you're new around here. Let me know in the comments below which of these players I've talked about that you don't already own are you looking to bring in soon? And also, which players have I not mentioned that you're also looking to bring in because of good fixtures? I didn't want to go through every single team. There are some teams with good fixtures for the rest of the season, but not necessarily between 30 and 33. So let me know in the comments below. Give it a like and hit that subscribe button. And lastly, if you've not already checked out Patreon, there's a link in the description below. We're nearly up to 300 members now. So thank you very much to everyone that has already signed up. They're all up on the Legends wall. If you want to get your name up there, support me, support the channel. There is a link in the description below. Loads of perks and benefits over there. I will let you go and read them. I'll probably be back tomorrow for one more video before the weekend of the international break. And like I keep saying, normal content resumes next week. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.